Imposter syndrome happens all the time. At Collect, I was there. I was like, this is the best moment of my career. Why am I here?
Hello, I'm Elaine and this is An Art to It, the podcast where I talk to artists and makers about the realities of running a creative
A
business.
warm welcome on a blustery Cornish day to Carolyn Tripp, who is joining me from London, from her studio in Wimbledon. Lovely to see you, Carolyn.
Lovely to see you. It's blustery here too. Probably not as much, but
Well, let's just hope the wind doesn't make too much noise in the background.
absolutely.
So I'm just looking behind you at all your
Mm.
beautiful vessels, and when I was thinking ahead to this chat, I checked back and I realized we first met in 2018 when you were showing at Made. And then life has gone on and we've sort of kept a bit in touch. But last year I walked into Collect, which for anyone who doesn't know is the big crafts council show of the year where prestigious galleries from all over the world take part. And there was your work in with Cynthia Corbett Gallery. And I was just a little bit proud, going, ooh.
Yeah, it was a moment. It really was. Yeah.
So for anyone, any fledgling ceramicist out there, um, what was
What
your route to
happened?
success?
Yeah. But in fact, then you saw me at my very first show because Made London was my very first show. I'd applied not for a minute thinking I'd get in, and I'd actually applied to that and also Handmade and got into both. And that was my first year of making, well, my second year of making this work, but my first year of really making fully formed work in this sort of new chapter of work that I'd started because I lost my mum in 2018, and that was literally her illness 18 months before was the start of this body of work that I'm doing now.
Because I'd read on your website, and I have to say, first of all, when I teach various of my courses, one of the things I talk about is your sort of about page or your artist
Yeah.
statement. And blimey, yours is absolutely, it is the gold standard because you tell this really fascinating story about
Mhm.
the inspiration. So I will let you tell it. And anyone who
Yeah.
doesn't know Carolyn's work, have a look first of all
Yeah.
at your work and then listen to this.
And I will just say though, on that About Me page, it isn't my first About Me page. But I knew that what I had before wasn't right. And one of the things I learned when I did Craft Council Hot House was that, we're not good at everything. And when you're not good at something, getting help is the right thing to do. And so I met a guy called Dan Good and workshopped with him. I was actually making a video, which is also on my website. And I wanted to tell the story of how I create my work and why I create my work in a short video. And actually, that video I use, I might well have it at Ceramic Art London this year. I have it on my stand because it helps people to understand the process because it is complicated. And Dan and I sat down and workshopped that together. And I do believe in getting help. We use accountants. Why not use wordsmiths? It depends what your skill areas are, and also sometimes you're too close to it, aren't you? And you
Mm.
need someone from the outside to look in. So yeah, I'm very proud of that About Me page, and Dan has a lot of credit for that. So,
Well, I was doing a mentoring session with an artist the other day and talking about trying to get storytelling into things. And
mm.
when I was sending her the notes, I said, look at Carolyn Tripp's because that's exactly what you want.
Oh, thank you.
So to go back to your
Mhm.
work, I mean, it is a
Mhm.
fascinating story and I think it's worth telling. So, please share.
Yeah, I mean, I up until 2017, I'd graduated at the end of the 90s with a degree in ceramics. It was my second degree. It was another career, if you like, after my first. And I graduated, and then you're sort of left, aren't you, in this world, this big wide world where you don't have all the materials. But me and a few friends, Lorraine Rutt, who I know you've spoken to before, and a few others from Camberwell, set up a studio in the Arches in Peckham. And I started to work there. I also had two young children. I was making work, which was really nice quality ceramic work, but there wasn't really a story behind it. It was more of an idea, if you like. It was much more functional, and I was producing work. And whilst it was great, I don't think my heart was in it, looking back, completely. And I was also teaching. I was teaching ceramics, and I still do to this day work with a social enterprise up in Haringey where we work with adults in recovery from mental health issues. I'm now a board director and I do the odd bit of teaching there, but for 18 years, that's what I've been doing. So my work was essentially on the side, keeping my hand in, making some products, but I don't think I ever really believed in what I was making. So when my mum got ill, I'd got 2 jobs, 2 children, a dog. I was a lone parent. Something had to give because she lived 100 miles away and I was doing a lot of traveling up to see her and taking her to treatments. And so what gave was that work, because my heart, I mean, I used to get orders and my heart would sink a little bit, which tells you, doesn't it? So that stopped. And then I thought, right, well, I don't want to do nothing. And so I sort of turned to the wheel, which I'd visited at college, but never really got that much to do with. And I just set about teaching myself to throw. And the thing that started it all was finding a little Imari bottle that my great uncle Bernard had brought back from China on his travels. It's actually Japanese, but somehow he'd brought it back. And it had a very tall, thin neck. It's not thrown. It's handmade, probably in a mold or something. But I was to sort of challenge myself to making something with a long neck. And you might remember that a lot of my early work was, the necks were very important. And so I set about teaching myself to do that in porcelain. And along the way, have, had a lot of teaching from other people. Every year I treat myself to learning because I love learning. And I think we all need to all the time. So yeah, that's where it started. And then in terms of the decoration, sitting a lot with my mum, she had the blue and white ceramics that had been at my grandmother's house. We used to spend a lot of time watching those antique shows in the afternoon, and she would say what she used to like, and we'd talk a lot. And I guess blue and white became a bit of it means a lot to me. I remember it at my grandmother's house. I remember talking about it with my mum. And so I started using stock transfers to decorate my work. And I was doing that up until the point of when my mum died, and we had an open studio, I remember, in Peckham, and I'd got this work half finished. And Lorraine said to me, put it out. I wasn't going to be there because I was too upset, but she said, put it out. And when I got back into the studio after the open studio, there were lots of messages saying, we love it, we love it, we love it. And it was sort of like, oh my God, people actually like this. People are engaging with it. So there started this, I carried on sort of making, but really decided I wanted to put my own expression rather than using stock transfers. And so started investigating about ceramic transfers, had some made, subsequently learned how to make them myself. And so the work is really, it's like a visual diary. It's things I collect, things I notice. It could be a poem that I wrote when I was 18. It could be a poem I wrote last week. It could be some song lyrics. It could be a little roof that I saw somewhere. It's all sorts of things, but it's like a visual diary of things I find important. I call it things I notice. And a lot of it started as a way to remember my mum and keep her memory alive. And so lyrics from the songs we played at her funeral and things like that appeared. And so it started. And because I was being so expressive and being very personal, all of a sudden, someone who's been quite shy all her life was suddenly shouting. I didn't really want that. So I sort of took this work and I tore it into pieces and placed it on. So when you're looking at it, there'll be things that you perhaps recognize, but they'll probably mean something else to you or something different to you than they did to me. But they're all about universal truths, some things we all share. So I think for the first time, my work became personal. And that's a very happy place to be, essentially. So that's it.
And I mean, I think that's beautiful, and it's that kind of moment when you go, there's some external stimuli, and it takes you in that
Yeah.
path, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I am also interested. You said on your website that you didn't pursue a creative path straight after school, and you ended up working in advertising,
Yeah.
which of course is that perfect blend of words and images.
Yeah.
Did you find that an advertising career was sort of, did you think it was going to, I don't know, fulfill that creative drive in you? And did it, or not at all?
Yeah. I mean, it didn't. I think I thought it would. At school, I had been deemed academic. which is slightly ironic because I think I'm probably dyslexic, which, I struggled a lot, but I was bright, I suppose. And in those days, in the 1970s, you didn't do the academic subjects and art. And I used to look longingly at the art room but yeah, never went in there. And so never really got much confidence. But I was a great crafter at home. I realize now what we would call now a crafter. Young people talk about crafting, and I was always making things. I was printing fabrics, I was mixing glues and making liquids and all sorts of things. But yeah, going into advertising, I think it was also glamorous. And this was the 80s. It was glamorous. I thought I'd be at the heart of creativity, but being a woman, a young woman at that time, and being, I suppose, presentable, I was put into the accounts department. So I was the person that was the liaison between the creative department and the client, doing a lot of business things. I learned a lot about strategy, but I was always frustrated and never quite confident enough to say, well, I've got an idea. And if you were, the creative departments were very male. They were very, very male. And it was difficult, it was difficult. And I really had enough. It took over my life. I didn't have a social life apart from with the people that I worked with or the industry I worked with. And yeah, it was all consuming, really. It was great fun at times. I went on some shoots, but I was there to look after the client, not to get involved in what was happening. So it was frustrating. It was frustrating, for sure.
And you left that to then go traveling.
Yeah.
Was that I'm going to go traveling and find myself, or was that with an aim
You
in
know.
mind?
I mean, there were two reasons why I went traveling: a broken heart and trail finders. I'll say those two things. What happened was I had a broken heart, a really badly broken heart that took me a very long time to get over. And I have sort of family in New Zealand, and they said, come and see us for a holiday. And so I went to Trail Finders on Kensington High Street to book my ticket. And they said, well, look, if you're going to go to New Zealand, you might as well buy a round the world ticket. It's a lot cheaper and you have to stop off. And so this trip to New Zealand, which was going to be a few weeks, turned into 9 months away traveling around. And I got a real bug and learned to scuba dive. And I don't think I mentioned that on my About page, but then I ended up doing scuba diving in Belize for a number of years, working with a conservation group. And it was a period of life where self-discovery. I was 30. I was in tears as I left my mum at the airport. But it was so good for me. It was the making of me, really, going on my own at that point in time. And yeah, and gap years weren't a thing, in my life where I was from, it wasn't a thing. And never had thought about it before. But yeah, it was scary as anything, but it was brilliant. And I look back, it was brilliant.
And how long were you away after your
Well,
5 or 6 weeks plan?
I never worked, let's put it this way, I never worked in a 9 to 5 again. Like I did self-employed work after that, in marketing. I took whatever I could get, really. I was working sort of 6 days a week, but I had evenings. So I went to pottery class in the evening. I went to stained glass class. I eventually ended up doing an art access class 2 days a week, which gave me the equivalent of an art degree. So I sort of got my arts education in that time. And it wasn't planned. It was slow steps, nothing really thought through. But I guess I followed my heart a little bit and did the things I wanted to do. And at the end of the art access course, I had a portfolio, and that portfolio was substantial, added to by the work I was doing at the evening class in pottery and stained glass. And I thought, well, I'm going to apply for a degree in ceramics because that was the thing I really loved. And I did, and I got into Camberwell, and that started, what has been the happiest. I mean, how old was I? I think I graduated when I was 36. So this, I've had more than half my life now doing what I want. So I feel very grateful for that. Very, very grateful.
And do you think ceramics had always been there as the path you were going to go down, or
Yeah.
was it happenstance that you had a good teacher and a good experience?
Yeah, I look back and I think to myself, a few things happened. One was the test card that would be on every, evening on the television. So it was this girl, with this pottery wheel, and I always remember that very clearly. But I think a lot of people of my generation did. And then I remember a toy coming out, and it was a toy, and it was a toy potter's wheel. And I desperately, desperately wanted one. And I begged and I asked and I didn't get one because I don't think they were cheap. But I'm so glad I didn't get it because I know now what I know. The torque on it would have been so poor that as soon as you put your hands on the clay, it would have stopped, or, and actually that would have probably put me off. So it was always a yearning. I wanted to scuba dive. I used to watch Jacques Cousteau videos and I got to do that. And yeah, I always wanted to have a go at pottery. And it is one of those things that I think people say it now when they go and do these pottery taster sessions. I mean, you either love it or you don't, and I just, as soon as I touched clay, I was sort of, and not just that, it was the people I met, those people on my degree. I'm still firm friends with so many of them. And we get each other in a way that perhaps the people I met at work previously didn't get me because I don't think I got myself then, and it's a wonderful community that I work in. So I'm not sure clay was always there very knowingly, but it has fulfilled those yearnings that I had.
And so you came out of Camberwell, and you and a gang all got together with your shared studio space.
Yeah.
Did you feel comfortable immediately saying, "I'm Carolyn and I'm a ceramicist," or did you have any of the often talked about in these podcasts, the imposter syndrome?
I mean, I think when we first left, we were high and we were, yeah, I'm, and the degree show was we had a difficult degree show because they for what this 1 year only they only let us show one piece, so it was all very frustrating. But I got picked out by Edmund Duval to someone to watch, and all of this sort of thing. So I was riding high really. And then we spent a year doing up at the studio in Peckham, and then I got pregnant halfway through. And I was 36. I did want to have children, and so I think for a long time I didn't really. I was more of a mother than I was a ceramicist, even though I always kept my hand in and I would go to the studio whenever I could, which wasn't that often. And I think it's later that the imposter syndrome comes in because, when I left college, there was no digital anything, and we were told to write to 5 galleries and send our slides in and all this sort of thing. But the work I'd been doing at college was all slipcast and it was all very detailed, really difficult to do when you first come out and you haven't got a blunder and you haven't got all these other things, and you suddenly realize that glaze room with all the ingredients, my goodness, that was a special place to be. And also you have no deadlines, no, like you've got to have this in by 2 weeks Thursday. So I think for a long time I probably, didn't really think of myself as a ceramicist. And then I got my first teaching job. And then I basically, the way I studied for that was I made everything in my studio and photographed it step by step by step, did cards for people because I'm working with adults in recovery from mental health issues and a lot of them can't remember things. And so it was how to make this work for people. And in that time where I revisited every way of making in ceramics, I think I became much better at calling myself a ceramicist. Although I think until I really started to develop this body of work, there was something lacking. And even now today, I'll vary between calling myself a potter and a ceramic artist because art is really what I'm in the business of, although I'm using the craft of pottery to tell the story. But imposter syndrome happens all the time. At Collect, I was there. I was like, this is the best moment of my career. Why am I here? All of those sorts of things. And I think you get that all the time. The way around that for me is to talk to my friends and they will talk to me and it'll be like, oh, I'm having a really bad day. I don't, and they're like, calm down, you're okay. And talking through the reasons why you should be there and why. And I don't know whether it's a female thing. I don't know. I think probably it is much more so because I don't hear many of the men talking about it. But I think I'm getting there in realizing that I do have something to say. But it's much quieter than perhaps, say, my male counterparts might be. I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, and without wanting to diss any blokes, I do very much notice. And I was telling this story to someone the other day about a chap, a painter, who phoned me up and said, very, very confidently, would I be interested in showing his work? And I said, well, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I'm not taking on anyone new at the moment, blah, 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 explained this. And he did sort of give the impression that well, that's very surprising. You don't want it.
Mm.
And I was telling that story to another woman, and she
Yeah.
said, but what's really interesting about that, Elaine, is you apologized immediately to
Yes.
him for not being
Yes.
able to show
Yes.
it.
That's true, isn't it? That's absolutely true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't dream of asking someone if they wanted to show my work. I'd wait for them to come to me and then, but I should be saying, right, I want it here. This is where you should be doing it. But yeah,
Well, where you are now, absolutely.
yes.
But how easy did you find it in the early days to sell and to promote your work?
Yeah, I think I was very lucky because I did handmade, and handmade chose my work for the poster. So when that happens with them, they give you a very prominent space in the show. So I was right there at the front. I met some great clients. I got a contact through that for the British Museum. They were putting on an exhibition, wanted to sell my work in the shop. And so that happened. I mean, you pay an awful lot of commission. I have to say, it's the most enormous amount. But the prestige of that was worth it. And it was slowly, slowly, slowly. And then probably COVID was very good for me, as it was for a lot of artists. And I did this thing called the 2.6 challenge, which was instead
Mm.
of the London Marathon, I decided I'd throw 26 pots in a day, took the wheel home to the garden, although we could come to the studios. And had this really long day throwing 26 pots because I'm not a production potter at all. I don't work like that. And then the next day, turning 26 pots, I hadn't even imagined what that would be like. But momentum grew, and I had my kids there filming me, and we did Instagram. And, that year of doing Instagram in COVID really helped me to get a customer base, a fan, whatever you want to call it, people who are interested in my work. And then the artist support pledge was very good to me as well. I started telling a story every day, I suppose, and people were saying how much they looked forward to it. And so you gain a confidence with that. And then what happens is, you get a gallery, you get another one and another one approaching. And galleries are very good at finding people. And, I now have gallery representation through most of the country, various times, and I can only supply so much. I don't work in a production way, so I've been very much stepping back a little bit in the last couple of years, making less but more thoughtful, and probably larger pieces which are selling for more, which I enjoy. It's a nice progression really for me.
You talked earlier about the Hot House program for the
Yeah.
Crafts Council. Did that, was that useful in kind of distilling your ambition and what you wanted to
Yeah.
achieve?
I mean, totally it was. And that was 2020. And so we spent up until the March having meetings and getting together and getting very excited about this year's programme. They were brilliant at putting it online. We hadn't really heard of online meetings, Zoom meetings, anything like that. And I then lived my year on Zoom with them. Lots of help with how to manage finances, a day-long seminar on Zoom and finance. You think it would be horrendous, but it was so useful and so interesting. And I still use parts of it to today. And it also gave me a group of people who were from all corners of the craft world, essentially on the way up, handpicked. It gave me confidence. I was part of that group. And still to this day, I'll go to collect and I'll see a handful of them, and go to another show and a handful of them will be there. And we all have quite a bond still from that time. So yeah.
And do you think that, and more specifically, showing with a gallery like Cynthia Corbett, is changing your client base? Do you think that there are people who are, for want of a better expression, very committed ceramic collectors?
Definitely. I mean, it's opened up a market. Cynthia, and also working with Preston Fitzgerald, who's a big ceramics curator. And they both have, clients, collectors, and are very, very good at supporting artists and telling the artist stories. It's exposed me to a whole new group of people who do seriously collect ceramics and want to see what you're doing next. I've also worked with Fired Up For, the charity that Kate Malone set up, which is about getting soft clay into young hands, and given work to auctions and Secret Ceramics that happens at London Craft Week. And that again, the people buying that work are often serious collectors, and it's lovely to meet them afterwards. I have a lovely story when I donated a piece I went along to look at the show, and there was a man standing in the sort of the room, and he said, "Oh, are you an artist or a collector?" And I said, "Well, actually both, but yeah, I have some work here." And he said, "Oh, which one are you on the list?" The names of the artists were there, all the work was anonymous. And I said, "Oh, I'm Carolyn Tripp." He said, "I've just bought your piece." It was so wonderful. It really was. So I got to meet him, and he said, "I love it." So I was able to tell him the story behind it, which was nice. So yeah, it's definitely has opened up a new market. Yeah.
And it's very different being part of Collect to being part of, I know you've done the Contemporary Craft Fair at Bovey Tracy before
Yeah.
now, sort of from not quite the sublime to the ridiculous, but, it's
Yeah.
a different experience, and it's a different audience. Do you still do any of I know you do open studios, but do you do any
Yeah.
other ceramic fairs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing Ceramic Art London this year in May again. I couldn't do it last year because it clashed with my open studios. And although the Wimbledon Art Fair is an open studio, we get nearly 6,000 people over the 4 days. So it's a major fair for me. My studio is quite a big studio, but I can have 30 people in here. And the 2 open studios we do a year pay my rent, which is great. So then everything else on top of that is good. So I do things like Ceramic Art London. I'll do the craft potters shows very often. I'm not going to do them this year. I haven't decided if I'm going to apply for Oxford yet, but Oxford and York, the ceramic shows are quite good. But I find that I'm pretty busy supplying galleries. And one of my wishes for this year is to have a little bit more time to experiment. And I'm at a point where things are slightly changing. And I spent the last 4 weeks of last year and the first 2 weeks of this year painting. And I'm not a painter, but I've really enjoyed just getting lost in color and paint and shape. And so all around me, I have drawings and they're all inspiration and they're all forms. But I feel a change are coming, I suppose, a slight, it'll be a slight shift, but it's a new direction slightly. So, yeah.
Oh, I'd be interested because
Mm,
I was thinking back because as I say, I really loved your work and I showed you
mm.
once,
Yeah,
and you did get a lot of interest. And I think for me, when I was thinking to myself, why did we not pursue that? It was mainly because of your colours
yeah, yeah,
wouldn't fit with the aesthetic of most of the things I show, on the
absolutely.
walls.
Yeah,
And I know you did do some sort of turquoisey and
yeah.
black and white then as well. Is your potential new development going to stay in your white, blues, and reds, or are you going to?
I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I mean, at the moment, where I'm going is yes, but it's maybe a bit more painterly. I suppose that's the way to describe it. And it might be that this is a direction and I come back and then I go somewhere else. I don't know. And that's the freedom I want to have this year. That's the freedom, is to experiment and play. It's not going to be a massive change. It's going to be a slow evolution, I think. I've seen a lot of people over the years make big changes and then it's not quite worked. And I think it's really important to test and see. And so that's where another thing, open studios are great for that, just gauging people's reactions. When you're getting those numbers through the door, you can often gauge people's reactions to something as well. So, but some of the work I'm going to have at Ceramic Art London is less dense in terms of decoration, but probably on the same colours, but not as dense, so maybe it will appear different, I suppose.
And I remember having this conversation with Judy Mackenzie,
Mm,
who you probably know, who does
yes, I do.
Neracome,
Yeah,
and she was saying really what ceramic collectors want is more of the same. If they're going after
yeah.
one ceramic artist, they don't want you to suddenly change
No,
your
no, and I,
direction.
I think that's really important to remember. So everything has to be complementary. I mean, most of my work, I make it in groupings. So I'll be decorating, say, 20 pieces at once. And essentially, if someone wanted to buy 20 pieces, they would go together, but they can also work individually. And I've always worked like that. And I suppose one of the things I'm looking at for Ceramic Art London in terms of presenting my stand will be groupings. It'll be, these 4 pieces work really well together. One might be a bowl, one might be a big moon jar, one might be something else, but they're going to work together. And that's how I want to move forward, presenting things like that.
And I often ask people, what would success be to you, or what did you envisage success would be? And you've sort of already answered that, I think, by saying that having the time to play, not being under
Yeah,
pressure. Would
yeah.
that be, or I don't want to put words in your mouth?
Yeah, I think so. I think many, many years ago, probably 15, I was seeing a life coach for a little while. And one of the things we did was do a 5-year plan. I'd never heard of such a thing before. But like a personal 5-year plan, not a work one. And I think I'd written something like, oh, I hadn't got a dog at this point. It was like, walk to my studio with my dog. And at that point, I was in Peckham. It was not a walk to my studio. Walk to my studio with my dog, spend my day making ceramics, and walk back again, and that my children are happy, and all of those other things are a given. And it didn't take me 5 years. It took me probably 10 or so, but I got there. And yeah, the fact that I do what I do every day. I'm sitting in my studio now. The sun is beginning to come in and shining on particular pieces. And this is often the time I pick up my camera and take pictures that will then appear on Instagram. That's what happiness is to me. And when I'm away from my work, I do get quite itchy. I like to be able to throw. I often say all I want to do is be able to throw and forget all this paperwork and everything else I've got to do, all the stuff that happens at home. I just want to, be able to throw, and then I'm happy.
But you do say paperwork, which is admin, which is a huge part, obviously, as we all know, of being a creative
Yeah,
business.
yeah.
Do you think, having A, worked in advertising, then B, done the hothouse, it has helped you understand that this business is not just about making beautiful
Making
pots?
things. Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Totally. And I think I probably have a confidence in it that I don't see in other people. People always say, oh, you're so good at marketing yourself. And I don't think I am particularly, but then I suppose I do it with a level of knowledge and confidence that I gained in my advertising career. I learned about strategy. I learned about, public speaking, all of those things, which held me in very good stead in what I'm doing now. Often in the past, I've been, oh, you're good at this. Could you write this for me? Could you do this for me? And I don't like being that person. But I'll always help out a friend. But yes, it's definitely helped me. And I don't shy away from it. I don't hide it. It's definitely helped me, give me confidence, I think, in a lot of what I do. And if you've got a product, you need to find that USP to tell the customer. And who is your customer? You need to talk to them in their own language. So yes, it's very much a part of it.
And did you, at any point in your journey or during Hothouse, look at any other business owners or entrepreneurs and think, I really like what they do, and I'm going to
Yeah,
try and learn from them?
it's interesting. In Hothouse, I think we had to choose people we looked up to. There's other ceramicists and other makers and things, but I think I like to look at broader than that personally. What things that I find engaging. I'm a bit of a sucker for TikTok nowadays because it's quite fascinating, all these things that are on there. But and how that can move a business. I mean, we've got a little bakery up the road from us. It's an independent bakery, which is quite rare in London. Even the ones that say that they're independent get their dough delivered to them, and they bake it on the premises. This is one where they're actually making. It's called August Bakery, and they opened a year and a bit ago. And I was one of the first customers in there. It was on my dog walk, and now, on a Saturday and Sunday, there are queues. People are queuing for half an hour to buy their bread, and they're amazing cakes and things. And they're all they're using tradition. They're making Jamaica cake like my grandmother used to make. They're making, and they're bringing it to this young generation. I'm really old when I'm in there, but it's incredible how their business has taken off because they've set their values. They know exactly what they're making. They're authentic. You can see where everything's come from. Their prices aren't extraordinary, and they're communicating their message very well. Another one is a skincare brand called Dr. Sam's, where it's not high end, it's not terribly expensive, but she is high end, and she does a lot of educational videos. And I find that again, it's communication, and I think probably that's what intrigues me, communication. I love the way Lucky Chat Productions sell their films. I love their their marketing around their films. I'm very intrigued by clever marketing, like I would be in the old days of advertising, where there were rules and you can't do half the things you can do now. People had to be very clever, and that we still remember some of those old commercials. The gorilla playing the drums for the Cadbury's Dairy Milk, incredible, because where was the product? But that's what we all related. We all know what it was. So
when I was thinking of recently, the silk cut adverts, when it was just the purple silk with a pair of scissors.
That's branding, isn't it? That's
Didn't
absolutely
tell you
brilliant branding. Yeah.
anything about cigarettes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a bit like, when I see with my work, people, I think when they see blue and white, now they recognize, and so it's really important that I don't stray too far from that. There's something there that I have to take with me that's built up over a period of time, and consistency of message, communication. I find it fascinating. I really do.
But I knew when I walked into collect, I didn't have to go up and look that was you. I knew instantly.
That's lovely to hear, because that's what I'm after. And I do think, there's a lot of work out there which is very good, but it could be, unless you know whose it is, whereas mine is quite distinctive in that respect.
And I think that's the more distinctive you are, because I did a solo podcast about copying recently.
Oh, right, yeah.
There are people who, quite shamelessly, or not necessarily always shamelessly, but sometimes unknowingly do copy, because the work is not so distinctive that if anyone was going to copy you, it would be very, very obvious.
Yes, yeah. It's amazing how many people come up to me at shows and say, oh, I want to do this. I'm going to do this. And you're just thinking, well, do something else. Learn and do something else. But yes, copying is a big problem, and I hate it when I see it, and I hate it when I see galleries supporting people who are making things that are like somebody else's. We spend a lot of time and practice. It's a very giving profession, pottery, ceramics. We're very sharing, and I'll always help somebody, but you hope that that person will then take what I have been asked before, could you make these, could you copy these, could you do, and I probably could, not as well as, but I could do something similar, but I won't do it. That's not what I'm here for. It wouldn't give me any satisfaction whatsoever. So.
And what has given you satisfaction? What would you say you are most proud of?
Well, I think it has to be Collect. I was on a tour on one of the first few days of Collect with the V&A, and I had my daughter with me. She's a young woman now, she's just 24. And we were going around the galleries, and the person giving the tour was someone I know, Preston, he's a curator of mine and has been a supporter for many, many years. And he knew that I had worked with Cynthia. And so he made it the last stop on the tour for all the people in this group. And we came in, and he did a talk about the work that was there and with Cynthia. And he said, and then we have a very special person here. And he made me go up to, I've never been so nervous in all my life. But, it was such a thrill to be there at Collect with work there, not just there as a maker looking at all this wonderful stuff, and have my daughter there. And then my son and his girlfriend came to visit as well. And that was really, they both knew how special that was for me and how precious that was. And when Cynthia first said to me, I'd like to show you at Collect, I couldn't quite believe. I sort of thought, I think she said that, but I'm not 100% sure. And when I got the follow-up email, I was just thrilled. And, she's an amazing woman at supporting through her Young Masters Art Programme. And that's how I met Cynthia, was I entered the Young Masters Art Prize. It was a real pinch me moment. And I had a ticket to stay to the private view and I couldn't stay. I was just overwhelmed, which, it doesn't happen often really, but, it really was quite an overwhelming event for me, because I've visited that show since, I know, the day it opened virtually.
Finally, I do ask everybody this, as I know you have listened in the past, you will know this. The podcast is called An Art to It. Do you think there is an art to running a successful creative business?
Yes, I do. I think the art is making sure that you do the things that you're good at. you either learn the things that you aren't so good at, or you outsource the things that you aren't so good at. And that obviously costs money, so maybe you have to learn some of them until you're able to afford. But it's about making sure that you protect that time of creativity. What I do is I say, right, I'm going to do paperwork today, and sometimes I'll stay at home and do paperwork. Sometimes I'll come here and do paperwork, but this is a paperwork day. And then other days I'll say, right, well, everything else, my phone goes on silent a lot when I'm here. I've tried to educate friends into the fact that I can't just pick up there was a great Instagram post the other day where their phone was covered in clay, and they're trying to, and it's like, this is me. So, you can't just ring me. I can't just pick up. So it's about separating out that time, making sure that the creativity isn't killed by the business, but the business needs to be there to support the creativity. Otherwise, what are you doing? And also have a bit of fun. It's not all serious, is it? I'm lucky here. We have, I know, 200 studios. They're not all full every day, but there are people to talk to. There's a laugh to be had. I'm really grateful to be doing what I want to do. I'm grateful to be doing it in this environment with people around me and a door I can shut when I need to. So yeah, I'd say it's get support and allocate time. Make sure that you have your time for being creative.
Beautifully put. I'm really looking forward I'm going to collect at the end of February.
Yeah.
And I would really look forward to seeing your work there and going, oh,
I knew her.
I know her.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I might see you there. You never know. It'd be lovely to bump into you and have a chat. So,
Yeah,
but thank you for this. It's always a joy to be able to talk about your work with someone who's interested, and it always helps me inform my practice when you start reviewing it and thinking about things as well. Even though I hate the sound of my own voice.
Carolyn Tripp, thank you so much.
Thank you, Elaine.